I tell people this, it's a bit of a caution, like, be careful when you bring beautiful thinking into your life, it tends to upend things for you. It can upend a relationship, it can upend, because you see there is a better way. There is another way we should be thinking about it. And
Oh, wow.
it's a very potent and powerful thing.
Welcome to Brand Storytellers, where we discuss the brands that succeed with the people that created them. If you like these episodes, please like, subscribe, share them, help us build the channel. Today, we're talking to someone that I have admired for a long time, Carolyn Hadlock, the former Chief Creative Officer of Young and Larimore Advertising in Indianapolis. Carolyn led this regional agency to national prominence, working on both national and regional accounts. But her latest venture, the Beautiful Thinkers Project, is the one that excites me most because she talks to leaders in art, science, business, and all other categories about how to bring together beautiful thinking to solve our most pressing problems. I'll link the information about that and the other thing that Carolyn shares with us as she dares us to be a beautiful thinker.
I think it's a very personal answer. I don't think there's a one size fits all. I think that's what
Sure.
makes it beautiful thinking. But if I had to summarize it in what I've heard and then how I've come to think about it is bringing multiple perspectives together that are very different and coming up with something, an insight, a product, a service, a thought, something that you would not have had on your own or something you wouldn't have had with other experts in your, like, vertical experts in your category. I just interviewed somebody who said beautiful thinking is actually, it makes you feel, not think. I guess I probably talk more about what it's not when people talk about this topic, which is it's not just superficial. So I really think that beautiful thinking doesn't just live in this sort of, Pollyanna optimistic space, but more, I mean, in reality, it should embrace all of the dualities and then sort of, come out on the other side with a perspective.
So where did the inspiration for you doing this come from?
The inspiration came from I became the first executive creative director the agency had ever had.
Right.
And we'd been in business for 20 years. So I thought I have got to learn pretty quickly on how to be a good ECD. And so I did what I usually do. And I just go to the top of the mountain and I ask people who I think are doing amazing work all around the world. And so it started off as a Tumblr. It started off, its original name was Eunoia, which
Right.
I think maybe that's
Okay.
when maybe I talked to you. Um,
Yes.
and I loved it because it was Greek for beautiful thinking, and it has, it's the shortest word in the English language with all five vowels, all the things like, a creative nerd loves.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
as I started to expand outside of the creative discipline and start to talk to CMOs and C-suite people, I think it became more of a hiccup than a through line. So we shifted to the Beautiful Thinkers Project. So it started off Eunoia on Tumblr, then became the Beautiful Thinkers Project. That was more in written form, full interviews, and then in 2020 it became a podcast.
And
Yep.
this is your life now as far as
Yep.
the kind of next step of your career. So where does that go? Where's that career going?
I started full time in 2023. So I just came up on a year. I absolutely adored Young and Larimore. But Bart,
Hmm.
at the end of the day, I had good people that I put in place. And I wasn't really, my job as ECD was more managing and cultivating the agency reputation from a new business
Right.
perspective, from a recruiting perspective, and then from a thought leadership perspective with earned
Right.
media. And
Right.
that was the part I just found myself gravitating towards so much. And I talked to my partners about it. I just said, this
Hmm.
is where I want to spend my time. The reason I needed to do that for the project was I wanted to be more than a podcast. I wanted to turn into more of a platform.
Right.
So in 2023, I said, okay, I have the podcast, but the
Hmm.
other two pillars that I want to explore are um, education. You know, the podcast is all on people who are beautiful thinkers today. And I
Right.
think focusing on beautiful thinkers and how they do beautiful thinking kind of added a nice nuance and dimension to the content.
Right.
But the fact of the matter is that's really only half the audience that I really want to get to. And I really want to get to fostering the next generation of beautiful thinkers. And so education is really important to me. I mean, with the agency, I traveled around the country and I spoke and recruited at all the programs that are of note: Brand Center, BYU, Chicago, Miami, all those things,
Right.
SCAD. And I loved working with the kids, you know, and but I also love working in the boardroom, you know, so this
Right.
gives me an opportunity to do both. And then IU approached me and asked me if I would be a professor of advertising. And I said, I no, I don't think that's what I want to do. However, education is an important part of what I want to do. How would you feel if I taught the Beautiful Thinkers Project class as a
Hmm.
course? So I did that in the fall of last year, and I'll be
Great.
doing that now in the fall. It's a huge, I mean, it's a huge time commitment. I don't know if you've ever
Oh,
taught,
I've
but
done
it,
it. Hmm.
and I love the kids. So I helped them do their own podcast season, a standalone season, which was lovely. And I still want to do that work. I think it's important. But that was one. And then the other thing was really what can I do to bring the project to people in person?
Right.
So the third pillar is really events. And how
Hmm.
can I participate in events, not create events, but participate and help amplify events. And
Yeah.
so last year, I decided to sponsor a film in a film festival.
Oh,
Um,
great. That's
and it
exciting.
was at Crested Butte Film Festival in Crested Butte,
I,
Colorado.
I've
And
been there.
so I'm still working on that content right now.
Uh,
But it was a great experience. And the reason I wanted to do that is because I wanted to be on the ground in person and really experiment with live and people and people who are there for a common cause. I mean, if you think about my podcast and even what you're doing right now, you
hmm.
know, how amazing would it be to get myself and the other people you're talking to around the table
Right.
to be in conversation. And so
Right.
my hope is to really, leverage the in-person potential at an event level and do some interesting things there. So 2023 was my year of exploration. If my remit to myself was how
Hmm.
do I create a platform that goes beyond this podcast, those are two ways. And then, okay, I'm going to do some experimentation inside of those and also the podcast and see what I feel drawn to and I mean, I learned, my gosh, so much,
Oh,
so
that's the
much.
great thing about it.
But everything I do has a brand focus, same as you,
Hmm.
right? I mean,
Oh, yeah. Hmm.
everybody is a brand, every interaction is a brand engagement. I mean,
Right.
I think you and I are kind of in a similar space. So from the event perspective, I would love to do like Davos. Well,
That's
I have to
great.
give my mentor, David Young, credit for that because
Oh,
I remember talking to him about something and he said, Carolyn, I love advertising. I started an advertising agency and advertising can do a lot. Like if you want to change somebody's mind, make
hmm.
an ad. If you want to
Hmm.
change the world, make a film. And
Mm.
it's always that just, I think, planted a seed inside of me. If you
Hmm.
really want to know what people are thinking, and if brands really want to know what people are thinking,
Right.
go to a film festival. I mean, between the types of films being made, there's a lot to glean from that. And then in between, movies and films and people having conversations, and people are there literally to learn.
That's
Nobody's coming in with an agenda. So
yeah.
I really got energized by that. And I think there's a lot of opportunity. And even right now, Sundance just, I think, finished up on Sunday. And I
Hmm.
was reading through the same old stuff, in the
Yeah.
trades of like Audible had a sound lounge and people could go listen to their favorite book, or Chase Sapphire Reserve had a lounge. And it was just like, you guys don't get it. You just don't get it. You're spending
Right.
so much money and you're not
Right.
really getting to the heart of the matter.
Yeah.
The people would be better served if a film got made because of you, you know?
Right.
And it doesn't even have to be, connected to your whatever you're doing. It could just be your values, your beliefs, or
Yeah.
there's so
S-
much opportunity.
Does a film come to mind that did teach you something that was, I mean, you
Yeah.
may have been entertained by it, but it taught you something that's resonant?
I don't know if it was the programming of the Crested Butte Film Festival, but I would say I would not, I mean, entertaining would not be the word that I would use for most of the
Right.
films I saw.
Right.
Most of the films I saw challenged me. They were thought provoking. They were
Right.
passionate. There was, I'll tell you two. One was the one that I actually sponsored, and it was a film called Sophia. And Sophia is the world's most recognized humanoid robot.
Mm.
And Sophia has been around for many years, and she was actually built and created by a creative, David, who went to RISD, and so it was just like what happens is it's a documentary of her kind of coming to be, and he goes over and he's overseas, and he's in China, and he's building it, and he's getting investors, and how difficult it is. So the story arc is a really fascinating one, but it's really about AI, and everybody's scared of it, and
Yeah.
all of the questions. I mean, even when I interviewed the directors, that was during the strike that was happening, the writer
Hmm.
strike and the actor strike. And, I think creatives are maybe like the front wave of, fear-based from what AI is going to do as far as
Oh,
displacing
yeah.
jobs. And
Absolutely.
so, it's a really interesting thing to like look in the eyes of this and go, how do I feel about it? And at the end of the day, for me, the Beautiful Thinkers Project will never sit in fear of anything. It will
Right.
always embrace it, and it always strives to help shape it. I would much rather help shape something instead of fighting it. And I think, this film was really interesting because it was like Sophia could be, I mean, in China, they were like, their vision was to have one in every, elderly person's home. Sophia
Hmm.
could keep you company. Sophia could make sure you take your medicine. Um,
Oh,
or at
so
an
many.
airport,
Yeah.
so Sophia could be a translator. I mean, how many people,
Right.
don't speak the language? So I think he was ahead of his time. And when I first saw the story, I was like depressed because I was just like, oh my God, this is so sad. This guy tried everything and he's still, barrier after barrier. Um, but when I saw it again, and I've seen it several times now, I really thought it was a poetic telling of the story of what it means to be not only creative, but to be a creative ahead of your time, in
Hmm.
the pain that can bring with it. So
Right.
that was a good one. And then the other one, which I'll just quickly say, um, is one called King Cole, and it was Coal. And the director, I didn't get to meet her. Sad, she's getting ready to have a baby, so she couldn't come. But it was sort of what happens to a community. And this was, the Appalachian and Virginia and Kentucky, like they
Right.
raised generations lived on and were raised on, tending to coal, and that was their
Right.
livelihood, and they took great pride in it and deep pride in it. And it's
Right.
so easy to hate on coal. It's so easy.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it's dirty, and it's all these things. It's bad for the environment. But the way this director handled it was so beautiful. I mean, they
Mm.
literally in the film had a funeral for coal, and just how it was the vestige. It was sort of like the ghost of times past. Um,
Hmm.
but you couldn't walk out of that film. You walked out going, yeah, my position on the topic of coal hasn't changed, but
Right.
wow, I have deep empathy for those people and what that's like to have to come up with an entirely new livelihood. That's your home. You had your kids there.
Do you have any other things planned for the future?
Yeah, so 2024 is I've got to I mean we shot so much content. I interviewed directors on the ground. I did so much at Crested Butte. So now I'm holding my own self accountable and saying I've got to get that done and published before I move on to the next thing. I think I'll probably go back out to Crested Butte again, because I think there's a lot of opportunities to bring more dialogue to the fore. There was a conference in Malmo, Sweden called The. Have you ever heard of it?
Mm-mm.
I hadn't
It's
either,
called
but it's called The, just the word The.
The.
And
Okay.
yep, The, and it's supposed to be like TED before TED became TED. And
Uh-huh.
so I'm submitting to speak there. So that if
Oh,
I do that, that would be my event, and I would do something there. Yeah. And so my season that I'm working on right now, the podcast is all in Scandinavia. So there's a lot of nice, dovetail things. So, but my dream would be to have people be in person. I have something on the books. We haven't set a date for it, is to do a dinner party where I bring those people together and have dinner with a chef who I interviewed who's going to cook for everybody. But I love the idea of Jeffersonian dinners. And I don't know if you've heard of the Thomas Jefferson dinners, but he used to have these dinners and he would invite a handful of people and then he would have a topic. And it
mm-hmm.
has sort of, rules of conduct. So everybody gets a topic ahead of time. One that he did, which I loved, was impermanence. And so your assignment was to think about that from your perspective, your life experience, your skills, your talents. And then you came and you had dinner together, and then there could only be one conversation happening around the table. I don't want to do a conference. I want to be part of conferences and help them, and then also
Yeah.
help my initiative. But I just think the intimacy is just what's lost.
Back to one thing that you said, you talking about the state of the world, state of society, where we are now.
I mean, it's nice to look at the analytics of where you are. And I mean, there's 139 countries that listen in on it.
Oh, wow. Really?
And I do interview people, abroad. And that's the beautiful thing about this technology
Yeah.
is you can
Yes.
do that.
Absolutely.
But yeah, it's a really interesting place to be right now. And I remember when I told my partners I was going to be leaving, and I had the thought, and I thought, this is either the worst time in the world for beautiful thinking, or it's the best.
I doubt that you realize how important this would become to you.
Oh, no idea. Had no idea.
Yeah.
And
Right.
I will say, and it's funny because I mean, I've been doing this. I mean, what Tumblr was, I started that maybe 8, 9 years ago, 10 years
Mm-hmm.
ago. And I will say, and I tell people this, it's a bit of a caution. Like, be careful when you bring beautiful thinking into your life. It tends to upend things for you. It can upend a relationship. It can upend, because you see there is a better way. There is another way we should be thinking about it. And
Oh, wow.
it's a very potent and powerful thing. And I have been firsthand part of that. But also, it's given me a lot of permission and a lot of confidence to say, hey, we may not agree politically, but that's okay. We have
Yeah.
these other, like, for me, it's less about how do we differ, and then where can we agree? Where can we
Right.
find common ground?
But the problem is, I think, is so many times people want complete authority, and
And it's
and
not leadership. I saw a
no,
great
that
thing
is
last
not
night.
leadership.
Simon
Mm-hmm.
Sinek did a whole thing on, you have authority and then you have leaders.
Yeah.
I think you and I are way more in the collaborative space and
Yeah.
camp. And it's
Yeah.
just more interesting that way. I've been that way, since I was a young art director.
And you can kind of relax, and then you can step back and just say, okay, maybe it's time for me to exit stage
Yeah.
and let that carry on. My big concern is the state of the industry
Mhm.
and what it offers the
Yeah.
creative mind.
And two things come to mind when you share that. One is, I think for your listeners or your viewers here, how you and I met was two creative directors in sort of like off the beaten path markets. We met as
Exactly.
creative directors. I called you and I
Right.
was just like, how are you getting these budgets to do these things? And
Yeah.
you were so
Yeah.
kind. But I think that was kind of a gift for both of us, is,
Mm.
not
Oh,
being in
yeah.
the hotbed and not being in the on the main stage. And I think that just created this sort of like restless dissatisfaction.
We
Yeah.
were what we were in an authentic way that we could be true to ourselves, our values, all of that.
Yeah.
And we
And
had
we
a lot of fun.
benefited.
We,
Yeah.
oh, and totally
Yeah. I
benefited,
mean, not
totally
knowing,
benefited.
that's what I said. The greatest thing that ever happened to me was I worked for two guys, poet and a philosopher and a painter, um,
Mm.
who didn't know anything about advertising. And they
Yeah.
formed this agency, and it was the greatest gift. I mean,
Yeah.
I would be judging at CA or the Effies or wherever, and I would
Right.
talk about the agency, and people would be like, What? Like, what kind of
Yeah.
agency?" And I'm like, "I know, these
Right.
2 people, they didn't know what they were doing, and God
Yeah.
bless them that they didn't, because
Yeah.
that sort of, unintentional ignorance," and they would say some intentional, but was a gift. And then the other thing I was gonna say, Bart, is just after, watching the IU Media School kids go through, career day, and, people come in from all over the country, they have people on Zoom, and they had a lot of creatives, and all my kids walked away with, "Holy shit, do I have to go to portfolio school?" And I was like, "Hell
Uh-huh.
no.
No.
Hell to the no. You have so much debt
Yeah.
already."
Oh, yeah.
Like, I
And that
mean,
the model
it's
is
insane.
terrible. It's terrible.
It's terrible.
Yeah.
It's awful.
And
So you
that's
were way ahead of your
yeah. Yeah.
market.
Yeah, and that was my purpose. I mean, somebody asked me one time, "Why are you doing this?" And I said, "I want to change advertising." I said, "Our model of bringing people into the industry is totally wrong. It's totally
Yeah.
selfish. The model for educating people is not correct for the industry. The
Mhm.
whole academic model I have difficulty with because I think it turned into a money making machine. And that's the other thing. I have literally gotten to train people all over the world too. I have somebody right now
Yeah.
that's in Australia. I did somebody that was in Germany, somebody in Brazil,
That's so cool.
Canada.
Just the ripple
Uh,
effect. Yeah.
yeah, all over. And but this one person that came to me was so discouraged. She had a really bad job experience, and
Mm.
now she had just blossomed like a flower. I mean, just opening up, and has a wonderful portfolio now. So I know, and I know her heart. She is going to do it because she is a good person, and that's what the industry needs. That's what
Yes.
our society needs. We need people with good hearts, and put away the selfishness and put away all of that thing. And so, what do? I think what you're doing is chipping away at that. What I want to do in my life is chip away at that, and
Mhm.
and I think there's a lot of other people like that. And so, that's why I had to talk to you about beautiful things.
Thank you. I'll end with, when I had my first day of class, I got my students. I had 17 students because I was doing like a practicum, kind of like a lab. And so I got them, I came to class and I brought them journals, and I got stickers and pens and everything. And I said, I want you to document beautiful thinking. This is
Hmm.
we're going to come in and somebody's going to document it. And at first, like the first 2 weeks, they were just like, what? And I said, I'm not going to tell you anything more. Just
Right,
go find something. And it
right.
was so fun to see what they came up with, and
Hmm.
things that they observed and things that they witnessed. And I got a letter from one of my students over the break, and he said, I used beautiful thinking the other day when I was in my class, and it was just like, yes. I mean, so brick
Oh,
by
that's
brick,
it.
right?
That's
Person by
it.
person.
That's it. You know you're hitting the mark when you
Yeah.
hear comments like
Yeah, the Beautiful Thinkers, it's on Instagram. We have a page on LinkedIn, and
right.
yeah, so season 7 is going to launch the end of
Wa-
February with the
Wow,
chief creative officer of IKEA in
fantastic.
Malmo.
I get very encouraged every time I talk to Carolyn because of her sincerity and her genuine efforts in making the world a better place. If you enjoyed this episode, please again like it, share it with someone, and subscribe to our channel so we can continue to build. We'll see you next time.